Military and government retirement plans don't seem to be covered as often by the national media, at least in comparison to 401ks and IRAs. And that's unfortunate, but thanks to a viewer's request, we are going to be diving into one of them today, known as the Thrift Savings Plan, or TSP for short. Hey everyone, Daniel here, and welcome to Next Level Life, a channel where you can learn all about investing, debt, retirement, and many other financial education topics besides, because let's face it, the schools aren't going to teach it for us. So if any of those topics sound interesting to you, or if you want to learn how to better handle your money and have more financial freedom, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to my name to be notified every time I upload a new video. Now I do want to say up front that I have never personally used a TSP. So everything that I say in this video is going to be based off of secondhand accounts and research as opposed to personal experience. So look at this video as more of a solid starting point for you, and definitely consider checking out the links to the articles that I've used while researching this video, which I will be leaving in the description below, as well as consulting with a financial professional before making any final decisions regarding your TSP. But with that being said, in this video I'm going to be going over what the TSP is, what your investment options are within it, as well as the steps to rolling it over into an IRA or 401k if you want to do that once you've left the service. Let's get started. So first off, what is the TSP? The TSP is basically like the 401k for military and government workers. And what's nice about it is that you're automatically enrolled once you start working. In a TSP, you have a few options to choose from when deciding where to invest your money. First, there's the I Fund, which is an index fund that tracks the Morgan Stanley's Europe, Australasia, and Far East Index. Its ticker symbol is EAFE if you want to do some more research on it on your own. There's the S Fund, which is an index fund that tracks the Dow Jones US Completion Total Stock Market Index. It's mostly made up of small and medium-sized US companies that aren't already featured in the S&P 500. Which of course leads me to the C Fund, which is an index fund that tracks the S&P 500. Then there's the G Fund, which is comprised of short-term US Treasury securities. The nice thing about this fund is that it allows you to earn interest rates similar to that of long-term government securities, with no risk of principal loss, since the principal and interest payments are guaranteed by the federal government. Though it should be noted that the average returns aren't going to be as high as some of the other funds available, which is understandable since you're taking less risk. There's the F Fund, which is an index fund that tracks the Bloomberg Barclays US Aggregate Bond Index. It's mostly made up of treasury and agency bonds, asset-backed securities, and non-corporate bonds. And finally, there are the L funds, or life cycle funds, which are made up of a mix of everything from short-term securities to other funds that I've already mentioned, and the amount invested into each item depends on which future date you expect to start withdrawing your money. So the investment options, while limited, appear to be pretty darn good. However, the really nice thing about the TSP is that it has about as low of costs as you're going to find anywhere. For example, according to the TSP website, the average net expense ratio was 0.033%, which translates to 33 cents per $1,000 of investments per year. That is really good. Like, really good. I've obviously covered expense ratios and the differences they can make in other videos before, like my passive versus active investing video, but it's worth reiterating again here, because many actively managed funds will have expense ratios north of 1%, or $10 per $1,000 of investments per year. But even some low-cost index funds will charge more than the options in the TSP. Take for instance the Vanguard 500 Index Fund. Its ticker symbol is VFINX if you want to go look into it further, and it's a fairly affordable index fund when you look at the expense ratio of 0.14% in 2017. That translates to $1.40 per $1,000 of investments per year. And it may not seem like much on the surface, but over time, trust me, the difference becomes clear, as the chart on Mr. Ryan Guina's article on the pros and cons of transferring your TSP to an IRA already indicates. Again, link in the description. So needless to say, the Thrift Savings Plan is actually probably one of the best retirement plans available because of the low expense ratios of the funds. And based on my research, there appears to be no added expenses or fees associated with the ability to keep your TSP account open, which is also really nice. And on top of that, you are able to transfer external funds into your TSP account from other retirement plans like your 401k, any other TSP accounts you may have, or even your IRAs. The TSP website has everything you should need to know in order to figure out how to roll your money from other retirement plans into your TSP account, and again, I'll leave a link to that in the description below if any of you are interested in checking it out. The only downside, of course, is that you won't be able to make any new contributions to your TSP if you're no longer serving in the military or working for the federal government. So, with that being said, the first step in deciding whether or not to roll your TSP over into an IRA is to decide if closing the TSP is actually right for you. But if you do decide that you want to roll your TSP into an IRA, then you're going to want to make sure that you do everything in the right order to make sure that your transfer or rollover goes smoothly. This is because you actually have to do it in a certain time frame defined by the IRS, because if you don't, the IRS could classify your transfer as a withdrawal and hit you with an early withdrawal penalty and taxes on the amount that you tried to transfer, assuming you're under the age of 59 and a half, of course. I also want to take a quick second to make a side note on some of the terminology here, because the word transfer and rollover are sometimes used interchangeably when it comes to retirement accounts, but they aren't exactly the same thing. A transfer means that you're moving funds directly from one financial institution to another financial institution. A rollover happens when one of the funds are sent to the investor, and the investor needs to deposit them into another qualified retirement account within a certain time frame, again, which is defined by the IRS. This difference is important because it can have major tax implications if not done correctly, as I said before. Alright, side note over. So the second step once you've decided to roll over your TSP is to open an IRA account before you start any other paperwork. You could of course just have the TSP write a check to you, but it's much faster and, let's face it, probably easier to directly transfer the funds into an IRA that has already been opened. This also reduces the likelihood of running into issues with the IRS that I, again, explained earlier. When you make the transfer, you're going to need to provide your bank or brokerage account number and your IRA account number before moving on to the next step, which is to complete the required TSP paperwork. The TSP paperwork you're going to need to complete is the Form TSP 70 or the Form TSP 77, depending on whether you're going to do a full withdrawal or a partial withdrawal, because both are options. If you're filling out the Form TSP 70 for a full withdrawal, then you'll need to fill out pages 1, 2, and 4, and or possibly 5 if you happen to be transferring a Roth balance. Page 1 includes all your personal info of you and your spouse if you're married, and you'll need to get your spouse, if you have one, to sign off on the transfer and get the signature notarized. This is an extra security feature to make sure that both parties agree with the transfer or rollover. In page 2, section 4, you declare how you want to take the withdrawal as either a single payment, life annuity, or monthly payments from your TSP. If you're transferring to an IRA, of course, you can choose the 100% for single payment option. And on page 4, and 5 if you use it, you can indicate where you want the funds to be sent, including the address of your IRA custodian and the account number where you want the funds to go. If you're filling out the Form TSP 77, the process is very similar, but the numbers and sections may be a little bit different. Obviously, as always, read through the directions very carefully and make sure you don't miss anything. If you have any questions, contact your IRA custodian to walk you through the form. Even if they don't do a lot of TSP transfers, they should be able to understand it well enough to help you get through it. And if they don't, well, then you might want to start looking around for a different IRA custodian with better customer service. Again, this is why it's important to do it in the right order. Also, something to keep in mind when going through this process is that you want to make sure that you're transferring traditional TSP funds to traditional IRAs and Roth TSP funds, if you have any, to Roth IRAs. It sounds basic, but you want to make sure you get this right the first time because both the TSP 70 and TSP 77 have sections for traditional and Roth contributions and transfers. Also, Ryan Guina, the author of the articles that I'm taking most of this information from, recommends, based on his experiences, that if you want to convert a traditional account to a Roth account, it's best to do it in 2 separate transactions. He recommends that you complete your TSP to IRA rollover, and then after that perform a traditional to Roth IRA rollover. He explains this further in his article, which again I'm leaving in the description for you below, and I highly recommend you check it out if you're actually looking to do this. Because as I said at the start of the video, I don't have a TSP, so I've never personally gone through this process, but he has. In fact, he's done it twice. The last thing that I want to mention where the rollover is concerned is that you want to be careful with any tax-exempt contributions that you might have. For example, if you had participated in a traditional TSP when you were in a tax-free location, you most likely had made some tax-exempt contributions. You can verify if this is the case if you see something like this on your TSP statement. You do not want to transfer your tax-exempt contributions into a traditional IRA. Those contributions are tax-exempt, so you are eligible to roll them over into a Roth IRA, and the long-term benefits of this are huge, because the funds you transferred into a traditional IRA will be taxed when you make withdrawals in retirement, but anything you transferred into a Roth IRA will never be taxed again. And since you weren't taxed in the first place, well, you get the idea. And I won't go into the exact specifics in this video of how to fill out the forms and make sure that your tax-exempt contributions are handled correctly. 1, because this video is already getting pretty long, and 2, because Ryan already did that in his article that I went over, and I want him to get the traffic for doing the work. So again, link in the description. So to wrap these steps up, in most cases, there won't be any issues if you transfer your funds directly from a traditional TSP to a traditional IRA, or a Roth TSP to a Roth IRA. In both cases, the TSP will issue you an IRS Form 1099-R at the end of the year. This informs the TSP that there was a distribution from your retirement account, and the company that receives the IRA will issue you an IRS Form 5498. This is a tax form that basically shows that the funds were deposited into another retirement account, and that will help prevent you from getting tagged with any early withdrawal penalties or taxes or any other unwanted surprises. And as you can imagine, the time it takes to complete a transfer or rollover does vary a bit depending on how busy your IRA custodian is and how long it takes the TSP to process your paperwork. In Ryan's case, both of his transfers were completed in less than 2 weeks, but he says it can take up to a month in some cases. So that's how to roll a TSP into an IRA. But as I said before, there are many factors to consider when transferring retirement accounts of any kind. So you want to make sure you take the time to consider any possible impacts on your tax situation, whether now or in the future, and your future retirement goals and plans before making any final decisions. Depending on your situation, you may also wish to consult with a professional for more personalized and specific advice. But remember, don't feel any pressure that you have to make a decision right away. Take your time, assess your options, and make a choice that best fits with your financial goals and plans. Thankfully, in the case of TSPs, you do still have the option to keep it open and roll some of it into an IRA. That's what the TSP Form 70 is there for. You just got to make sure that you have at least $500 left in your TSP account after the transfer, because that's the minimum that's needed to keep the account open. But that'll do it for me today. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell next to my name so you'll be notified of all my future uploads. I generally upload every single Friday, and if you have a friend that would be interested in this kind of content, be sure to share it with them. Let's really get this information out there and start our own financial revolution.